right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give it just a few minutes to get started before I bring Jennifer in. Good morning. Good morning. I see the comments flowing in. Thank you, Haley, Jody, Allison, for joining us. Not a familiar face here. My name's Gabrielle. I'm going to be helping out with the facilitation of today's event. We're going to give it just a few minutes to get started. Let people load into the chat, load into view. But feel free to drop your comments in, say hello, say good morning. Happy Friday to you. See, we have Marie and we have Annette. Good morning. Good morning. Jennifer will be joining us in just a moment. We're very, very excited today for sharing all of this with you. Jennifer's been working so hard on this book over the past few months. We've got a lot of good content, a lot of dialogue to share today. So we're super excited for this. Looks like we've got LinkedIn viewers right now. I'm sure we'll have a few YouTube, maybe some Facebook pop in. Good morning, Shauna. Thanks for joining us. All right. Well, I have 10:04. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so we can make sure to use this full hour. But again, if you're just joining us, I want to say good morning to you. Welcome to the special event celebrating the upcoming release of Clear and Connected: How Effective Communication Builds Trust in Healthcare by Jennifer McNamara. We're so excited to dive into the key themes of this book and learn how effective communication can transform healthcare practices. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to move my deck around. First, I want to just chat and give you an brief overview of what to expect on the agenda today. We're going to do an overview of Jennifer's journey in healthcare and her motivations for writing this book. Then we'll move on to an interactive poll. You can join on your phone, so get your camera ready. We'll have some QR codes to share with you guys so we can get your feedback on some communication-based questions and hear from you on some pain points that you might feel in your current or previous roles. We'll have plenty of time for your questions after Jennifer gives some readings and excerpts from the books that she wanted to highlight. And then we'll wrap up with some closing remarks and a special offer for all of you that are joining us today. All right. So if you're just joining, my name is Gabrielle Frazier, and I'll be your facilitator today. The goal of this event is to celebrate the launch of Clear and Connected and dive into the key themes of the book. Now, this book is more than a valuable resource. It's guidance, it's truth for anyone in healthcare, focusing on the power of communication to build trust and improve their outcomes. So again, I'm thankful and I'm just thrilled that you've joined us today. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Jennifer, but first I want to bring her in. All right, and here's Jennifer. Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
Good morning, Gabrielle. I'm so excited for this day. It's finally here.
It's finally here. Yes, so I have the pleasure of introducing you, our author. Many in the audience today may know her as a colleague, a friend, family member, or the vibrant personality that you are and that you have become within the healthcare consulting space. So Jennifer, her journey in this space began with her role as a medical biller not so long ago, where her interest in leveraging data and technology to improve healthcare outcomes first took root. Fascinated by the potential of data analytics to drive performance improvement and enhance patient care, she knew she wanted to be a part of this transformative movement. To expand her knowledge and expertise, Jennifer pursued opportunities in healthcare data management and analysis. She also took courses in medical coding and auditing, and also earned many certifications related to Certified Professional Coder, CPC, or Certified Coding Specialist. Her growing expertise in this areas provided her with extensive experience in healthcare data management and analysis. As her career progressed, Jennifer stepped into leadership roles within healthcare organizations. You might be familiar with her from many of these roles. She became the lead coder for a local hospital where she was responsible for overseeing the coding and billing functions for the entire organization. In this role, she developed strategies to optimize coding and billing processes, reduce errors, and improve revenue cycle management. Her experience in healthcare data management fueled a deep passion for data-driven healthcare education. Recognizing the significant need for high-quality, practical training and education in this area, Jennifer decided to start her own business dedicated to this mission. You may know it as Healthcare Inspired LLC. Today, she's the founder and the CEO. And this data advisory firm that provides healthcare organizations with data-driven solutions and insights for all. She's also a strong advocate for data-driven healthcare education and has developed comprehensive training and education programs that equip healthcare professionals at all levels with the skills and expertise needed to succeed in this rapidly evolving field. Through her journey, from medical biller to lead coder and healthcare data expert, Jennifer has come to appreciate the tremendous potential of data-driven healthcare to transform the delivery and management of healthcare services. She's excited to be at the forefront of this movement and looks forward to continuing the drive and innovation of progress in this dynamic and rapidly changing field. So without further ado, Jennifer McNamara.
Hello, everyone. Well, that's quite the introduction, Gabrielle. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I'm going to progress our slides. And we're going to talk just a bit about the inspiration behind this book. If you could share with our audience some of these bullet points that you have. And I want to start first with maybe a pivotal project where communication breakdowns led to patient safety and maybe issues that you've seen foremost firsthand. How did that impact what we're doing now with this book?
Well, I've been in many organizations, not just as, a coder biller, but also as a consultant in recent years. And I have had the privilege of working in very strong teams in the past. And so when I, as a consultant, went out and ventured out into the world and found that other practices didn't quite have the communication style I was used to, it kind of threw me for a loop. Like, well, everyone does the things this way, right? Because this is the way you do it. It makes sense. But then there's things where you realize they don't have the resources that they need. And that does sometimes lead to communication breakdowns where they may not realize that a certain resource or tool that other people have been using for years, or it's common, they didn't have. And so they didn't realize they were missing anything. And the communication between, I'm just going to start with the front office because that's where I started. And that is the first place I start when I go into a practice and try to help them fix their issues. I want to meet the people that are the first line of defense with your patients, the ones that meet your patients for the first time. I want to talk to these people. And that's where that project that I really thought about was like, I got to write a book about this because I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and I want to share what leads to these breakdowns, because it does lead to patient safety issues. If you don't have correct information from the start, it starts a progressive domino effect from the front desk all the way to when the physician gets to see the patient, and then it just continues from there. So we have to start working on communication from the beginning. Even if that first phone call, when they contact you, there needs to be strong communication right from the beginning.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure, everybody watching can agree they've experienced this in some level so far in their career, regardless of if they're at the front desk, if they're billing and coding. So this resource will be just an immeasurable value to anybody in the healthcare space.
Yes.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the overview of this book. I know from my own experience with helping you on the back end, just a few of the key themes, but I'd really like to take a moment to highlight some of the elements covered in this book. And if you could expand upon those in your own words.
Absolutely. So as you notice, the title really kind of overshadows it. It really complements the idea of trust and improving outcomes for patients, because most people know that myself and others that I work with, we're in the business side of healthcare, and so sometimes there can be a disconnect between the clinical side and the business side, but it's all interconnected with improving outcomes for patients. Because patients, if they are worried about their bills or even getting insurance coverage, that affects them emotionally, mentally, physically, and it may sometimes prevent them from even getting care. So we have to be able to connect our teams, clinical, business, everybody involved, to improve outcomes and build trust. And so that was the kind of the overall theme of the book. How do we better communicate to build the trust? Because we're at an all-time high right now of lack of trust with healthcare organizations. People don't trust the healthcare industry. They don't trust their insurance companies. They don't trust people in general. So it can be very difficult to get the healthcare we need because we don't trust people. And so that has a lot to do with how we communicate. Active listening again. We talk about our different communication styles that exist in humanity. What clear messaging really looks like. And one of my favorite chapters in the book is on cultural competence, because I live in a community in Northwest Arkansas that is very culturally diverse. It's a melting pot, as many areas in the country, that you might be familiar with. And it's just so amazing how when I worked in this area for the first time and I got my job here, I met so many different kinds of people. And that chapter is so precious to me because I really put a lot of my own experiences in it, my observations between different cultures, and how it really shapes a person's ability to get quality care. So you'll notice throughout the book, we're going to see these themes kind of overall highlighted. And then also we're going to give you those practical strategies, things that you can do to overcome the barriers that we might have.
Excellent. Yes. And I can also share to validate the clear examples and messaging that you gave in the book that our readers can look forward to are so simple to absorb, so very helpful on practical day-to-day application for how they can meet the needs related to cultural competence, related to clear communication, and building back that trust in healthcare. So just here to echo that I agree. And I think the readers could absolutely look forward to that as well. All right. As we get closer to reading, discussing some excerpts from the book, I want to chat a little bit more about some of the real life examples and the case studies that you shared within this book. They're sprinkled throughout the chapters, so there's plenty of examples to pull from. But if you could highlight just a few of those real healthcare settings and examples that spoke to you the most that you wanted to bring forth with this book, that would be great.
Well, I am going to share an excerpt from the book in a little bit. That is one of the main reasons I have been working so hard and sharing my story, is because of the trauma I experienced in a role several years ago. And it was my first time stepping out of, my production coder role where I was in charge of a team. And I love my surgeons. I love doctors. I think they're just the most amazing people in the world when they are trustworthy. And there are such ethical physicians out there, but unfortunately we live in a world we can't always trust everyone. So you may encounter individuals who don't always do things the way that humanity expects. And so I first time I was, I'm kind of in a bubble, I think, in where I was, and then getting out and realizing there are individuals out there who really truly don't know how to treat people right. So I experienced a toxic environment. I guess that's the best way to say it. And so I talk about that in the book, that experience, and I'll read an excerpt from the book that highlights what I went through that changed the trajectory of my career and why I wanted to change the way I communicate, the way I encourage others. There's also even just real stories in our compliance chapter. There's real cases that are very famous in the world that really highlight compliance concerns that also are patient safety concerns. Many of you probably know the amazing podcast Dr. Death. I mention it in the book because it profoundly changed my view on how we work in compliance and credentialing, all of the things that we do on the business side that directly affect the way a physician may or may not carry out their care. Should they even be a doctor? How did it get to the point where they were allowed to see a patient when they were harming them? Like, that is something that's a real problem in our industry. We don't have to look very far. The government always tells us of cases where there's fraud and how those fraudulent cases lead to patient harm. And not just that, harm to the Medicare program, all kinds of things. I do talk about in the chapter that's really dear to me as well is in a crisis, right? We all experience crisis in our life, and especially we may experience things that are we learn about in our in-services, right? In the hospital, we learn about what to do if there's a disaster in the area. I experienced that in Joplin, Missouri. We had that massive tornado in 2011, and I'll never forget the trauma that all of us experienced during that time. I worked in one of the hospitals there, having to drive to work every day and see the destruction, and just, even though I wasn't in the clinical side, having so much pressure on everyone to kind of pitch in, and we thought we knew how to handle the situation because we took all the tests on it. But it's never the same when you're in it. So I share my experience on that. So I think you'll really enjoy the diversity of tips and instruction, and also my personal experiences and just talking to you in the book, like a story. So it's kind of like a hybrid approach, right? A story and education.
I agree. What I got from reviewing on the back end was, it was like talking to a friend that was a little bit further along in their career and had some more experience than me, but they could share that invaluable knowledge of merging what you had learned from those in-services and those SOPs with your lived experience, which was truly special because a lot of people might not get that kind of connection in the workplace nowadays. You take into consideration telehealth and remote work. So I'm very excited for the readers to review those chapters.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And I just want to get it out to people, and I want them to experience this book. It's been such a long journey in getting these thoughts out, and I'm excited.
I agree. And I'm so sorry I have lawn care in the background, and I know we can all relate to that with remote work.
Oh, absolutely. Don't worry about it. No, it's like
thankfully, it's time for some interactive audience polls. So if you are joining us and you can see this QR code on the screen, I would encourage for you to take your phone out, use your camera, and highlight or select that QR code over there in the corner. We want to know and we want to hear from you. What are the biggest communication challenges that you faced in healthcare? We're going to focus on that first. And then I do see that we have a comment feature open as well. If you'd like to drop your comments in the chat for us to review, we can do that as well. And while we wait for those responses to pour in, Jennifer, offhand, because I know you have this lived experience, what are some of the biggest communication challenges that you faced and that the reader can look forward to in reviewing in your book?
Well, I mentioned earlier, honestly, like our teams, they just don't have all the resources that they need. And one of the things that we talk about as well, that we talked about in our podcast recently is, again, what people experience in life, either the way they were raised or the the way that they maybe interact with other people is different. And so from a leadership standpoint, I really talk a lot, I want to encourage leaders to read this as well, because leadership is really where it needs to really be encouraged, because you are kind of like setting the tone for the organization. You need to be able to communicate with your team. And if they can't communicate well, you need to figure out why. Be an encouraging person. Now, another challenge that we face on the business side is documentation. So again, that's another communication challenge, the written communication. So I talk about the different types of communication in the book: written, verbal, nonverbal. So sometimes even our body language can be an issue, can create a toxic environment. What we say with our eyes, what we say with the look on our face, the way we stand, and then the way we listen. And we mentioned active listening as part of this, and it's so true. An active listener is not just thinking about their response, but they're thinking about the person speaking. And with the point of listening is not hearing only, it's action. So you demonstrate that you heard what they said by acting on that. And so for coders, for billers, auditors on the business side, for physicians, nurses, anyone in healthcare, whoever's speaking to you, there's a reason why they've come to you. Maybe they're in your office asking you something, need you to do something. Do you understand completely why they're there? Not just, okay, I got to solve this issue and get them out of my office. I want to know why they're there, what I can do to help them, and kind of improve that team dynamic. I've worked in clinics, and I do talk about this in the book as well. There's a huge turnover in a lot of places. There's a level of impatience that exists in some organizations where they don't like the outcome. So instead of training people, they just get rid of them. They're like, oh, you're not getting it done, so we're going to find somebody else. Or that person gets tired of the culture and they leave. And the cycle just continues. The communication gaps haven't been closed. So that organization's not going to thrive. They're going to continue that cycle of toxic culture because they haven't fixed the problem. So figure out what your communication gaps are and fix them. There has to be something that's causing it. So I really encourage people to read this book and actively listen to what it says.
Yes, and I think that that's echoed right now with our poll. One response was, a lack of teamwork, and it's one of those chicken before the egg things of how can we have teamwork when the turnover is so rapid and so prevalent. Office personnel is being mentioned as well. But one thing that I did want to highlight on, because I do remember it as a theme, was documentation completion, and also providers not being trained adequately. Could you speak a little bit to that as well?
Yes, absolutely. For years, I've always wondered, I know that there has to be some kind of training in medical school for them to be prepared for modern healthcare. But the more I talk to people, I realize it's not being done effectively. Even some of these conferences that physicians go to, you don't often see the focus on the administrative side. They focus on the clinical side, and which is important, of course. But some of these bigger conferences the physicians are going to, the ones that actually need to understand how modern healthcare takes place on the business side, they're not prepared. So when you talk about credentialing and you talk about compliance and you talk about documentation, they just don't, sometimes they glaze over and they don't understand why it's needed. So I want to applaud actually one of the organizations here locally. Everyone knows who Walmart is. I know you know who Walmart is. I live in the Walmart community, and Alice Walton, they've started the AWESOME, which is an acronym for the new medical school here in our community that's really designed to hopefully fix this and help them understand what modern healthcare looks like. Alice Walton was recently at the HLTH conference, and she spoke on the fact that value-based care is a very big deal. And I'm glad that someone in her position has come out and said it, because we've talked about value-based care forever. And I think that's an issue. Physicians need to understand we've been in, fee-based service, forever. But what about really thinking about getting paid for the value you bring to a patient's care, the quality, the improvement in their life, getting recognized for that. And so I think that's another challenge. Physicians don't always know what's going on with the changes in reimbursement. They don't understand. And when we talk about policy, they just glaze over again. They don't see the connection to the payment and they don't see the connection to even just documentation. So I'll give you an example. Back in the day when we had our old guidelines, for those of you coders out there, the evaluation and management guidelines, 95, 97, it was really all about data. It was checking a box. And so we think about how it's shifted now with the 21 guidelines, that box checking should not be our focus. Now, yes, you have options, but when I'm teaching physicians now, I want them to get away from the box checking thing. You might have all these elements boxed in, but it doesn't make sense clinically. And so I want them to go back to just being a doctor. Think about from point A to point B. Your patient tells you they have these symptoms, they can't breathe, and they have a fever, and all this stuff is happening. What are you going to do about it next? What makes sense clinically to do? Document it. When you examine them, document what you have to do to figure out what the problem is. Document your findings of your radiology or your imaging, your labs. Don't just say you ordered these labs. Why did you order them? Connect that problem to the reason. And then in your medical decision making, tell us all that data you reviewed, the history of the patient, how did it contribute to what you just decided to do for them? What's the risk to them having or not having this? All of that, it's not just box checking. It's telling a story. And so I think that's what we're missing. And I really want physicians to think about, and there's some great ones out there. Shout out to CJ Wolf, an amazing physician, Corey Calendine, who is one of my favorite surgeons in the world. I just love him. And so I think that there are physicians out there who truly are just trying to improve documentation. They're good examples for others. So shout out to all you surgeons out there who are true documentation experts and who are trying to change the face of documentation for their colleagues.
Absolutely. And in summarizing just a few comments and responses we received, this is prevalent every day in every role, not speaking the same language as the providers not speaking the same language as the coders. And there are so many tools, that are available to help level that playing field, but ultimately it becomes a shared responsibility between all. And I do feel that that's where this book comes in so handy as a resource, because it is written for everybody. It is written for you to, on the individual level, absorb and take back to the workplace and implement practical changes into your workday that will then, I believe, pour over into the way that you interact with everybody, maybe even leading by example within the workplace. And, reach out to us if you would like some more information about that bulk purchase pricing as well, because we would love to get this book into your office, into your practice, and make sure that everybody can get on the same page with some of the practical applications and the guidelines that you share within this book as a resource.
Absolutely. So yeah, excited.
All right. Well, we'll transition then over more to hear some readings from you. I know you had said that you had highlighted just a few areas you wanted to share with the participants that are on today that they can look forward to expanded into larger chapters when they do receive their own copy of the book. So I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Well, in my introduction, I want to say I had such honor. I wanted to thank a lot of people that have been instrumental in my career and my life. And so in the acknowledgments, I'm very proud of being able to highlight those that have been instrumental in my career. And if I forgot, if your name is not in there, it does not mean that you are not important to me. But I did shout out to certain colleagues and, of course, my family who have been instrumental in my career. But so many of you have touched my life, and I wanted to thank you for that. But I do share my personal story in the introduction of this book. And this is very personal for me. And I wanted to find a way to get this story out. For years, I've been trying to figure out a way to put it in words. And so finally I get to share this because it's part of my therapy, getting out this toxic experience that I had. So we'll go ahead and start. The concept of this book also comes from a deeply personal experience in my career as a consultant that affected me profoundly for years to come. I once took on a job where the working environment was extremely toxic. The disorganization in the practice led to a hostile atmosphere, and I found myself unfairly blamed for pre-existing problems. The physician I worked with would yell at me daily, which took a severe toll on my mental health. One particularly painful memory is when, instead of addressing concerns privately, the physician publicly announced in a meeting that he was handing my work to someone else. This humiliating experience was compounded by the fact that I had been helping him find an office manager, making the betrayal even more hurtful. This situation escalated to the point where I began experiencing panic attacks, a physical manifestation of the trauma I was enduring. This experience taught me the profound impact that poor communication and toxic work environments can have on an individual. It reinforced the necessity of effective communication and the right way to treat colleagues in any professional setting. I want this book to serve as a guide for healthcare professionals, illustrating the importance of respectful and constructive communication, especially during conflicts. So I had to get that out in a way that would inspire and help people. I don't want to draw attention to the actual person because I don't want to do that. I want to draw attention to what I learned from the experience. So that was my goal in getting that story out.
Right. And then looking through the comments too, I'm sure that, unfortunately, this is not a solitary experience that you had. That unfortunately, as time rolls on and we build our careers, everyone can say that they were involved in a toxic workplace in some degree. So I think it's very, very brave, very vulnerable of you to share your experience, but then also take that knowledge and give some practical applications for what you've learned and what you're carrying forward as you move into new positions or the work that you do with practices moving forward.
Right. Let me move on to, I want to go into the chapter on cultural competence. And that one, chapter 6, it was something that like I said, that was my favorite chapters. And I really love the idea of thinking about the cultures because I love different cultures. I love ethnic food. I love all kinds of it. Like I don't even like American food. I live in America and I prefer non-American food. I'm all about culture. I love immersing myself. Years ago, my husband and I, we decided to learn Hindi because there was a large Indian population in our community. We wanted to communicate with them. So that was such a cool experience. I got to immerse myself in the food and the culture, and it was just a great experience for me. And so I really love and respect different cultures. And so when you see them in the office, they come in, what is your attitude towards someone different than you? So let me read this. Cultural competence in healthcare is more than just understanding different cultural backgrounds. It's about respecting and adapting to the diverse ways in which patients receive health, perceive health, illness, and treatment. It's about seeing beyond our own experiences and beliefs and recognizing the unique needs of each patient we serve. So I've learned through my career that cultural competence is crucial for building trust and ensuring effective communication. When we as healthcare professionals fail to acknowledge and respect the cultural differences of our patients, we risk alienating them and reducing the effectiveness of our care. But when we make an effort to understand their perspectives, we can provide care that truly resonates with them and meets their needs. So that is something that I think we're missing. And other colleagues of mine have mentioned this over the past in other podcasts. And I wanted to shout out to Terry Fletcher because I remember when she mentioned this on one of her podcasts in the past, where we see patients are reading their charts now. Like they have access to their medical records. And they may not understand the language a physician uses in their documentation. And they may even prefer a physician of their culture because that physician understands what they like to eat, what they, how they view the world. If they're a holistic medicine type of person, but they're willing to accept certain treatments, as a physician, are you pushing your views on them because you feel it's the best care, or are you really considering how it would affect their culture and their beliefs? So again, we've seen these shift lately of patients going to a doctor of their nationality or their culture. So we need to be able to understand it and be willing to adapt to these different cultures.
Absolutely. And I think we can all agree, one in service per year on this is not enough. one continuing education class per year is not enough, because the more that we learn, the more that we can connect, the more valuable that we can be, not only to our practice, but to the patients that we serve and that we connect with on a daily basis. And so I think that you did a really great job at outlining what all you felt was important to know about cultural competency as a whole, but also strategies that you can take not only to implement in your daily activities, but resources that you can lean to when you are at a loss for words, when you don't know really how to address it, you don't feel trained based on the previous education or knowledge that you have. So this chapter that you mentioned, it was extremely comprehensive, an invaluable resource on its own if it was its own book. So I'm very excited for the readers to get to learn a little bit more whenever they receive their copy.
Excellent, excellent. Well, next I have a reading from chapter 7, which is communicating as a team. And this is another favorite chapter of mine because the teamwork is like makes or breaks it. So communication requires you to speak to somebody else. And so you have different teams in an organization that have to communicate. And so, yeah, teamwork is like essential for our success. So one of the things I wanted to share is, just my observations in this chapter. So I'll read this part. I've worked in many different healthcare settings, and one thing that has always stood out to me is how the strength of a team can make or break the patient experience. When team members communicate well, they can anticipate each other's needs, address problems before they escalate, and provide a seamless experience for the patient. However, when communication breaks down, it often leads to confusion, errors, and a less than optimal patient experience. So it's important to me to when I go into an office. One of the reasons with Healthcare Inspired, I wanted to offer workflow optimization, because it's not just about how you get from point A to point B. It's the whole experience for the entire team, including the patients. Your patients should be a part of your team. They should be someone you think about in every decision you make. So if you're working at the front desk and you know someone in the back has to deal with the coding, you're going to try extra hard to get all the data correctly in the system so that they can do their job efficiently. And as a coder, you know that you have to get the correct codes out for the physician to get paid. So you care about the physician being able to be paid for their work, because they're going to pay you for your work. So it's a win-win. So you're going to care about what goes in the computer. Same with the billers. They're going to care about understanding the policies that exist, how that payer wants that submitted, so we can get paid efficiently and not have to correct it 3-4 times before we figure out what's wrong with it. We know it's right from the beginning. And office managers, directors, giving your team the space to do their job and not push them past their limits and tell them they have to get all of this in by month end or they're in trouble, like making them feel like a failure because they didn't get all the charges in, and giving them time to get it done right. And that may be easier said than done in some organizations, but I know there's a better way. And so look at what has happened to the industry because we've rushed the process. So this is something that we just need to think about. And I'm not going to say you have to do this, but think about the benefits of doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those excerpts with us, Jennifer. We appreciate it. And we're looking forward to it, and learning more, reading more about your experiences, and hearing how your journey really shaped the outcomes with this book. I'm going to give you a break to catch your breath real quick and just kind of summarize how clear and connected empowers the healthcare professionals that it will reach. I know that the main point of this is to enhance the communication abilities of healthcare professionals. I know that by refining how we communicate, we foster more cohesive teams, gain patients' trust, and elevate the quality of care provided, which almost seems to be the afterthought of the KPI, of the strategy, of the process. So I think it's great that you're really highlighting that with your book. I know that you're also urging others to implement these strategies outlined in the book in your everyday actions, whether it involves taking additional time to listen, clarifying those messages, or considering cultural variances. These minor adjustments can profoundly impact the quality and the impact of care delivery. And it seems that, while that is a very central and focused theme. It really should be the focus of everybody with every part of their workday. And so, if you could just share in summary your call to action for healthcare providers when applying these strategies to work. It could be something as quick as Nike's just do it. It could be, what would Jennifer say to these healthcare providers to apply these strategies?
I like the Nike just do it. I feel like a lot of us out there are like, just do it. Do
right?
what I say.
To the provider.
It's like what your mom told you. Just do what I say, because it's not necessarily that they're like trying to be in control all the time. Like a mom, they get frustrated and they're like, just do it. But they really come from a good place. They know what the benefits of doing it this way because they've been there. And I like to tell physicians, I've been there. You're not the only surgeon I've worked with. I've seen what happens when this isn't done right. Trust me. And that's the thing, is like, when you say trust me, that has to be followed with an action. And if you can't trust me, we can't work together. I can't work with you if you don't trust me. And nobody can work together if there's not trust. So we want to make sure they know. And I think with the new, like I mentioned, the guidelines earlier, that was a big deal because it was supposed to relieve the burden. But what we still find is, even though it was designed that way, the mental process that we had before didn't change. So we still felt like we had to document all these bullets without really making it simple. So I always tell my physicians now, my surgeons, think about your patient first and foremost. Just tell us what's going on. We will figure out what makes sense and what we need to we need to submit based on what you document, but don't leave anything out. And I think this book has also helped because I do also encourage patients in one area. It does speak to the patient specifically too. Patients are also involved in this communication process. So I tell my grandparents, I tell all my friends and family, when you are the doctor, don't leave anything out, because you don't know what you might say that could be important to your physician. Don't think that anything is insignificant. They will decide what is significant or not, but tell them everything. And then when your physicians are talking to you, they're going to, of course, take what you're saying, and hopefully they're going to document it effectively so it can be communicated. It's not just about reimbursement. Glenn Krause, one of the consultants that I just really look up to, he always says this. It's not just a reimbursement tool. It is really supposed to be, it's a legal document, but it's the patient's story. It stays with them their entire life. And so when you think about that's your life out there in written form, it's out there for the world to see. And so if you read your own record today, well, how would you care? How would you feel about it if it wasn't right? If it didn't reflect what truly happened, how would you feel? I do also share an experience of mine in the book that happened to me in the last couple of years, where I did go to the doctor. And as a patient, I experienced inaccuracies in documentation and how it made me feel. And so as a patient, I'm talking to you physicians, please tell your patient's story. Those are real people that want their story told. The reason they're there is because they need help, and they know they're trying to tell you as much as possible. So tell their story for their benefit.
Absolutely. Yes, very clear theme within this book, and I can't wait for the readers to get a hold of it as well.
Yes, yes.
So, in the sake of time, I'm going to turn it to the interactive Q&A. I see we do have several people that are participating in chat. If you would like to drop a question into the comments for us, please feel free to do so. And in the meantime, Jennifer, if there's any content areas you'd like to expand upon that we've discussed today, please go ahead and feel free to do so while we wait for those responses to come in.
Yes. And one of my favorite things about this book is the interaction part. So we were able to, at the end of the chapters, give you a spot to share your thoughts for your own edification, or if your organization decides to incorporate this and take on our communication training that we're offering in 2025, then please, by all means, use it for that. But one of the things that I've been talking about and with my clients and advertising is the need to add communication training into their compliance education. It really needs to be there. We need to add another level of compliance training to make sure everyone understands their responsibilities in communication. So I'm encouraging practices to adopt this training in their program, whether it's a separate training that my team and I come in and do for one day, or it's something you purchase a recorded video, recorded lecture from us to incorporate into your annual training, whatever it is. Please let us know, because we want to be a part of your solution. So that's one thing I'm really proud of, is that we are going to start putting out some how-to videos in 2025, some educational videos you can purchase along with the book that kind of go along with each chapter. So that's going to be a fun thing we're going to bring out in 2025, kind of like an expansion pack. So that'll be great. And we are going to work with other organizations to see if they want to adopt it in their curriculum. So there's a lot of things we have planned for 2025, but the book itself it's coming. I'm excited. I'm going to bring copies with me to all my travel excursions, my conferences. So if you're going to be seeing me out and about in the fall at conferences, I will have copies of my book with me. So feel free to come up to me and ask for a copy. And we have lots of great things to offer you guys over the next few months with this book.
Absolutely. Yes, this book is only the start of a series of bigger, better, wonderful things, communication trainings, but completely comprehensive in its own respect. So I definitely urge all of you to buy these copies as soon as they're available. We will have a Kindle PDF version or KDP version available as well, so a digital ebook copy on Amazon, and we will also have a print version available, a paperback that's a larger workbook size, where you can go in, like Jennifer said, to the interactive portions, participate in the journal prompts or the interactive learning practical application pieces of each chapter. So we have options for you for every reader in between. And we're looking forward to releasing more information about that later next week. So be on the lookout for that. One question I do want to bring up before we transition over, and something that's hugely important, not only for this book, but in the day-to-day respect of all of our jobs, is AI, technology per se.
Yes.
So as healthcare continues to evolve with new technologies, how do you see the role of communication changing, and what should professionals focus on to stay connected?
Yeah, such a great question. I want to shout out to Betty Hovey too, because her book just dropped talking about this a lot. And so I cover it in the technology chapter in the book. But really just to encourage the way we communicate being efficient, because it is going to change. It already is changing. For organizations that are adopting artificial intelligence, whether it's on the clinical side or the business side, they are already experiencing communication challenges because they may not understand how the technology works. And some people might be afraid to even say, I don't know what I'm doing. Like it's that communication. They're afraid to speak up and say, I don't get it. So, and that's another issue, is like, we have to get better at saying we don't understand. And that's one of the things I think that AI is going to help with. It's going to help read massive amounts of data, but it's also going to create an opportunity for our careers to expand. And we have to be willing to adapt. So if our role changes from coder to auditor, we have to be willing to let it happen, because it's all for the benefit of the patient, we cannot control what insurance companies are doing. It's crazy. I work in contracting and credentialing, and I'm telling you, we're at an all-time risk right now where practices are losing their ability to get paid efficiently. And so they're dropping contracts. That's affecting patients, because patients expect to be able to use their insurance, and they can't always now, because the physician's practice or the hospital is like, I'm dropping that insurance. We can't agree on a contract. So that affects the patient. So communication is really vital to understand why we need technology to help us streamline the process. There are a lot of practices who are losing money left and right, just for simple things that human beings just miss things. And so technology can help you capture those things more efficiently. And so I think that's really the key.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit more about high pressure environments that we all might be working in or have worked in before. So while we can't change the culture entirely ourselves, what can healthcare leaders do to foster a culture of more open and effective communication within their teams?
Well, we have to be active listeners and, like I said, understand your team. And we're in a different environment now. Different generations are popping up. We've talked about this before, where they are used to like getting in the schedule they want. And if they don't get the schedule they want, they will go somewhere where they can. So we're past the generation where you work 8 to 5 and then and that's it. And there are some that don't respect authority. So you have all of these different dynamics in the workplace now. So learning to adapt to that and make allowances where you can, but also be very firm with certain generations on this is how this organization works right from the beginning. So make it very clear that we do things this way. This is the policy. We have to follow it. If you don't follow the policy, you have to be able to carry that corrective action out. It's part of your compliance program. So we talk about compliance in the book. So one thing I have a huge pet peeve about is when people don't respect authority. I just can't, it makes me cringe. When I see someone talk back to somebody else in a rude way, it's not necessary. You may not agree with what they're saying, but it doesn't mean you have to treat them that way. There's constructive ways to communicate that don't tear someone down and don't make them feel inferior. So I think that's another way that managers and supervisors can, be more understanding of if someone's really upset, there are ways to diffuse that situation that don't involve going back with the same attitude. You can diffuse a situation. Don't get angry back. If they're frustrated, don't get frustrated too. Try to diffuse the situation. There's a lot of techniques that in our in-person training we'll combine with the book that is more interactive. So we'll have, conversations that we'll have different people have with each other during the training, kind of some conversations they'll have and see how they diffuse the situation. So there's a lot of like interactive ways in our actual in-person training that we'll bring to your organization with the book in tow. Of course, it's a guide along with our interactive training.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're all looking forward to this and the other themes that you've mentioned along the way today. So I'm going to move it forward just to get a general closing remark from you, and then I'll discuss the special offer we have for our participants that are in attendance today or rewatching this later on at a later date. But first, just share with us in your own words what this book means to you and to the reader as well.
Oh, this book means everything. It's a culmination of 20 years of my career and what I've learned, what I want people to learn. And I realize I can't solve the world's problems. It's not my goal. I'm not trying to solve the entire healthcare crisis. I'm just trying to share what I've learned and how it's benefited me and others. And there are a lot of us who have like mind and we think similar and we really just want to help. It's the reason that we're in healthcare. I also encourage people to think about why they're in healthcare. This book will help you re-examine why you do what you do. Because if you can't do this for the right reasons, then why do it? So consider that in your life and how you communicate with people in general. How does that shape your view of the world? And so I hope on a different level, it helps not just healthcare workers, but those who want to understand how the healthcare workers should act and be part of the solution, not the problem.
Yes, a solution. I agree. This book is a solution. It might be the solution so far when it comes to being clear and connected and highlighting that communication, the importance of communication within the workplace. And so since Jennifer, you've given this gift to us, we want to turn around and give it back to the reader. If you are interested in a discount code for either the ebook or the paperback version, I would encourage you to navigate over to the contact page of Healthcare Inspired's website, drop your email address to us with the subject line discount, and we would be happy to forward over a code for you once those are available for release and for purchase. Like I said, we only have a few days before those go live. So if you could just scan this QR code or navigate over to healthcareinspiredllc.com to the contact page, Just drop your email in with the subject discount, and we would be happy to forward you over a code for your purchase. We're looking forward to it.
Yay.
We are. I can't imagine how excited you are, for sure. And as always, we wanted to say thank you for your attendance today and with any other event that you've been on for Healthcare Inspired. This is one of many invaluable resources that Jennifer shares weekly to make sure that her information, her experience is getting out there to the community, that the lessons that she's learned from over 20 years of experience are being learned by others moving forward in their career. And so a big round of applause for Jennifer and all she does within this space.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And thank you everyone for joining. It's my pleasure to be here. And as Kimberly Jolivet Williams says, and is quoted in my book, it's an honor to serve. So it is my honor to serve. Thank you to all of the colleagues that have supported me, those out there that are always building me up. I want to do the same for you. And I will always try to build everyone up because it's what we do. We're humans. We want to help each other succeed. And there's no room for toxic cultures. Let's be better at communicating and let's all thrive.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we will be forwarding out those discount codes to any interested parties. And with that, we're going to end today's live stream. Thank you for participating. Thank you for rewatching this if you're rewatching at a later time. And we look forward to giving you more information about the release of these items soon.
Okay. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.